I'm upset. What's good, everybody? Got a great show lined up tonight. Ryan and I will be joined by Ryan Roberts of Irish Breakdown here shortly.
Hey, Phil. You're muted if you're trying to talk to me. Sorry.
That's not the first time that's happened on this show, so thank you for that.
No worries, man. We do a live podcast every single day, so I always do that to myself as well. So I totally get
Absolutely. Ryan should be joining us shortly, but in the interim, I see we have one of an Irish fan already in the comment section.
Nice.
Dallas fan. He also is a frequent flyer here, and he causes a stir. But everywhere he's at. Anyway, I want to thank you for accepting the invite to join the show today.
Absolutely.
Let me do this right, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ryan Roberts. He is the recruiting. He does recruiting for IBNation or Irish Breakdown, NFL draft scout for riseanddraft.com. He is a scout for the College Gridiron Showcase, co-host of the First Team Pod. I feel like I'm missing something. Voter. You are a voter for the Davey O'Brien Award.
I am. Yes, sir.
That's
yes,
excellent. Sir. That's amazing. And of course, not least, father, husband, and expectant father, as I understand, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. We're about Antoine's in here, man. Antoine's my guy. He comes on Irish Breakdown podcast all the time. He's
on all the lives, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we got Michael Campbell in here too, man. He's a good dude as well. So I see some IB crew in here, which is nice. But yeah, man, it's literally the baby can come any day now. Feels like.
That's
so
insane,
expecting the second daughter. So it's gonna be busy in the Roberts household sometime soon for sure.
Don't worry, I'll keep the dogs off you. Thank you, Twan. So I'll hop right in. Whenever Ryan joins, he joins. My Drago voice. So how'd you? It's my understanding you were an athlete yourself, right? You played football yourself. Always been a fan of it. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, my brief is that I, played high school. I played briefly at Frostburg State University for a year, which is just D3 football out in Maryland. It's like right? On the Maryland, West Virginia, like border right there. So
I'm very familiar.
Played a year, got banged up, decided to come back up, just got the Rowan education, all that great stuff here in Jersey. And I've been, I was freelance writing for a long time. And now I obviously do the recruiting for IrishBreakdown.com. I've been a lifelong Notre Dame fan, though. I always tell people it's like I had a choice what NFL team I wanted to root for. I didn't have a choice in college. Like, I just didn't have it. Like, that was it, man. I was an Irish fan from the moment I can remember.
Right. Yeah, we definitely will talk about that, Benny Woods, and thank you for joining the live today. If you're in the chat, please, if you have questions for Ryan, leave them. Be sure to like, of course, share the chat so we can get some more traffic here. Anyway, I am familiar a little bit with Frostburg. I actually did radio in Morgantown, WVAQ top 40 there. And yeah, so I drove there because I was coming from Northern Virginia. Nice. So I went through that area all the time. But okay, so always been a Notre Dame fan. Same for me. Here's the skinny, just a quick rundown of a brief rundown of my history. I am from the state of Ohio. Actually, I'm from Dayton, which isn't too far from Columbus. My entire family are Buckeyes. And I am the lone Wolverine fan. So it is that way for me. Anyway, speaking of Notre Dame, I think you also write for irishbreakdown.com, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so we do the daily podcast, and I'm, most of the recruiting information that you get on the site, free and premium, are my stuff. So yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So, because I want to get this question out the way,
Yeah.
recently, I guess in the last couple months, there was a defensive back recruit that had committed to the Irish in the 2023 class, actually, Brandon Hillman. For
Yes.
those who don't know, he was let out of his national letter of intent, and then, of course, later committed to the Wolverines. I guess my question is, because obviously you would have a little more insight. Me and Ryan kind of argue back and forth on this about the academics portion of this or whatever. And was it a situation where he didn't have the GPA? I was hearing.
Oh, sorry, Phil. Can you repeat that? You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I was asking, was it a situation where his GPA kept him out of Notre Dame, or was it a situation where he didn't have the required test scores? Maybe it's something different.
Yeah. So it was from kind of the basic understanding, because Notre Dame wanted Brandon Hillman in the class 100%, right? Like, he was a fantastic player, and I know Michigan's going to have a really good football player there who can play a lot of different positions. But basically what it was is it wasn't the raw GPA. It wasn't really a test grade per se. It was a class that he had to pass that he needed in order to qualify. So I forget what course it was or whatever, but basically he fell below what he needed to get in the one class that would have qualified for Notre Dame. And there was a lot of backlash because I guess it was close enough where it's like, can we work through this one a little bit, like we have a little bit of help and a little bit of support. And for whatever reason, it was just it wasn't just meant to be, I guess. So.
Yeah, man. Those sorts of things always suck, right?
Yes.
Especially with a guy who looked like he wanted to be a fighting Irish, and so that is an unfortunate situation. I tried to get him on the show.
Nice.
We were talking back and forth for a while, so that still may happen.
Yeah, he's a great kid. I'll say that. Like, it was a real shame because he did want to be at Notre Dame. It was a situation where Notre Dame was one of the first schools that had offered him, because for people that don't know, before the senior year, the only school that I think had offered him before senior year was Morehead State, because he was dead set on just wanting to play quarterback at the next level. And then when he opened it up, some schools obviously came in, and Notre Dame was one of the early teams to get in with him. So they really developed a great relationship. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And then, even to make matters even worse, man, he ends up with the University of Michigan. It could not have gone to a more a worse place. But
yeah, that is. And I think maybe it was not Will Fong. I forget the guy's name. He does a bunch of the Notre Dame stuff for 24/7. But he called it like really early, like as soon as he got out of that national letter of intent, he said, he was going to Michigan, and pretty much that's what happened. We've got another question here. All is well, go blue, Notre Dame. You two do a great job. Maybe that's not a question. Thank you, Michael. Tom Lloyd, thank you, Dallas fan. It was Tom Lloyd who posted that. I appreciate that. Moving right along, though, let's get into a little bit of 2022 Notre Dame football. The change from Brian Kelly now to Marcus Freeman. How has that been received throughout the fan base and on campus there?
Most fans supported it, I would say. There's always going to be like some subsection of a fan base that is against, kind of change or whatever, because Brian Kelly, I give Brian Kelly all the credit he deserves, right? Like, Notre Dame was not in the best spot when he got there, and he got him back to consistency, right? Like, 10 wins is kind of you need to get 10 wins or it's a kind of an underwhelming season for Notre Dame now, which when he got there, that was not the case. Before that, it was the Charlie Weiss era, and before that it was, it was the Tyrone Willingham, and it wasn't great, man. It wasn't great. So he got it back to consistency. But I will say this is I think that most Notre Dame fans would agree that it was just time for a change. It was it was just one of those situations where you were probably as good as you were ever going to be under Brian Kelly. You just kind of hit your plateau a little bit. So I think that most fans were very supportive of it. there are I think there's other subsections which are just like, hey, can we get a little bit more of an experienced head coach? Because Marcus Freeman had never been a head coach, obviously. So first time head coach at a place like Notre Dame, that is a tall order. There's no doubt about that, right? But I think that he brings a level of intrigue, and he's got a very charismatic personality. So the recruiting side of things, he's doing a really good job. He can really sell a program. He can really get kids to buy in. Obviously, there were a couple hiccups in 2022 as far as, losing to Marshall and losing to a really bad Stanford team last season. But I really think that there was a lot of positives that come out of that season. I think he really took hold of the program towards the end of the season. You ended up with a pretty good bowl win over South Carolina. So I think everything's trending in the right direction. Just a couple hiccups in a first season for a head coach, which is to be expected. But I think most Notre Dame fans are still very excited for what Marcus Freeman can do moving forward at Notre Dame. And I think if he is able to win something significantly over the next couple of years, make a playoff berth, make a run a national championship, hopefully, I really think this thing can snowball. I really do, because he's recruiting right now just based upon his charisma. If they get the tangible resume behind him as far as winning games on the college level, then I really think that this thing's going to snowball, because I think that it's just going to add fuel to the fire as far as his recruiting prowess.
Absolutely. I agree. In fact, I'm rooting for Marcus Freeman in some weird way, because I don't really like Notre Dame at all. We
don't play anymore anyway, though. So
I know, right?
It doesn't really matter.
So there's that. So we don't have to worry about that. But he's also from my hometown, so that's why I root for him. That being said, there was a strong contingent of your fan base, including a guy that's in the comment section here, Dallas fan, who hated Tommy Reese as offensive coordinator, right? And of course, this offseason, Tommy Reese accepts the job in Alabama. For you, was that a welcome sight, or was Tommy Reese kind of unfairly judged last season?
I think it's a little bit of a mix. I think there were some things that were holding the offense back last year that was out of Coach Reese's control. I do. I mean, I feel like the quarterback situation, especially after Tyler Buckner got hurt, it was like there's only so much you can design with Drew Pine at quarterback and be an explosive offense. Like, it was just, there are some limitations. The first couple of games of the season, the offensive line didn't play well either. So I do think there were some parts where I can't really blame Tommy Reese, but that being said, is that Tommy Reese had a decent leash at Notre Dame, and he's still a young coach, so he still has upside and he can still figure it out. But it's another situation where I do think that they underperformed with him. I do, 100%. It's not that he's not smart. I think he is a very smart guy. I think that he has potential as an offensive coordinator, but he got the job when he was a 29-year-old guy, right? Like, maybe it was just a little bit too early to be the head guy controlling an offense. So I think the best is yet to come for Tommy. But I really do think that the results were mixed. I mean, they averaged 31 points per game last year. So at that point, it's okay. I think that grass can be greener, but obviously Notre Dame has question marks at offensive coordinator right
now. G Money here says Tommy recruited the quarterback room, though. Is that there? I guess there is some merit to that, right? Even CJ Carr was a guy who really had a great relationship with Tommy Reese. And to Tommy's credit, before, I guess, NIL got involved, it looked like you guys were the front runners for Dante Moore, and that was based a lot on that relationship with Tommy Reese.
Tommy is a great recruiter, or a very good recruiter, I should say. Great might be a little bit strong, but he is a very good recruiter. I mean, to your point, he had a silent commitment from Dante Moore. Obviously, a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that prevented that, but you still get Kenny Minchie, you still get CJ Carr. I mean, you still have a pretty good run of a couple classes in a row. And I will also say that Tommy Reese does need also a hand in, like, Billy Schrouth was a big get that was mostly due to Tommy Reese's relationship. Cam Williams in the 2024 class of wide receiver is a lot to do because of what Tommy Reese was able to do on the recruiting trail. So he's a good recruiter. There's no doubt. The quarterback development, to Michael's point, I mean, I think I already said that a little bit, right? That's something that was not good enough. It wasn't good enough. It had to continue to improve. And I think the offensive play calling was good in spurts, not great in others. So it was very inconsistent. But from a recruiting side of things, yes, he was very influential and instrumental in those recruitments, without a doubt.
Absolutely. So this this season, you guys start off, or Notre Dame starts the season with what I think are three very winnable games.
Yes.
Right? You would agree. Before they host this year the Buckeyes. Um, what is the obviously? I guess the ideal outcome is that Notre Dame wins.
Sure.
For sure. What do you? I think last year that game was really good. You guys
Mhm.
held the lead late into the third quarter, maybe even into the fourth quarter.
Yep.
I forget when that happened, but uh, before kind of came together for Ohio State to win it. The other state, we don't say Ohio State here. Um, and but this year, what do you think? Do you think you've improved enough to challenge? Has Ohio State? They're going to be breaking in a new quarterback. That's something we talked about here on this channel before. What do you think happens this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the three big games on the, because that was the thing with Brian Kelly is, kind of back to the original point, was Brian Kelly beat all the teams that he should beat, but he never
Right.
really got over the hump of beating the elite teams, right? So there's three teams on the schedule this year. Like last year, you have Ohio State, you have Clemson, you have USC. Those are three.
Right.
I call them the pillar games. Like those are really the resume games for Notre Dame. You win 2 out of 3 of those, you're probably in the playoffs, winning 2 out
I'd
of
agree
3.
with that.
So Ohio State's a big one, man. It is, Phil, because I would say this. I'll put it like this. Ohio State has been a consistent team to contend for the playoffs, contend for Big Ten championships. They are, along with Michigan, the two powers in the Midwest right now. So in order for
Right.
Notre Dame to get back to the top, hopefully at some point, and become the once again premier program of college football, you got to be the premier program in the Midwest to start things,
For
right? Like you got to
sure.
be able
Right.
to cement that. So Notre Dame was winning. They were winning against Ohio State longer than Ohio State was leading in that football game last year. I
Right.
think you saw that they could match them talent wise at a lot of different spots, but there was some deficiencies. Obviously, the quarterback wasn't good enough still. Wide
Mhm.
receivers didn't make enough plays. Offensive line wasn't great in that first game. Notre Dame now has a little bit of buildup though, because that first game of the season, there was some transitional stuff, yada, 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 new guys in new spots. This now being a few games into the season, getting a couple of warm-up games, that's what you would call them, against like Navy, Tennessee State, Central Michigan, those types of dudes. NC State is a sneaky team that's kind of mixed in there, but you don't have the
Right.
hardest part of the season to begin. And I think that's going to build up to, hopefully, your team's rolling. Ohio State's going to have a first-year starting quarterback, although he's going to have a couple starts under his belt at that point. But I think if there's a year to take advantage of quarterback change,
Yep.
it's 2023. I mean, Ohio State's going to have a new one. Alabama's going to have a new one. Clemson's going to have a new one. And Cape Klubnik that's going to be starting. Georgia's going to have a new one. So I think this is the year to hopefully sneak up on the Buckeyes, or at least just stare them in the face and beat them, because Notre Dame has not beaten Ohio State in my lifetime. So they obviously need to make that happen at some point.
For sure. And to be fair, Michigan has had some recent success against the other state, but they pretty much had our number for the better part of 2 decades. So I get it. All right, let's because eventually I want to switch gears a little bit, but I want to make sure I knock out all my Notre Dame questions before we do that, and I'm not going to obviously keep you all night either. So,
No, you can. Yeah.
I think my next question was going to be the playoff, right? And the
Yep.
outlook on this season. Give me your best case scenario for Notre Dame 2023 and worst case scenario.
I mean, I think best case scenario is that you go 11-1 or 12-0 and you contend for a playoff spot. I really think that it's possible that Notre Dame could win 2 out of 3 of those pillar games, and be able to be 11-1, because it's a tough schedule for Notre Dame. It's not an easy schedule by any stretch, because although that beginning first 4 games is not very difficult, you hit that middle section where it's just like, dang, man, like that's tough. Like you got Ohio State, you got USC, you got Clemson. Like it's not easy. And even you got sneaky teams like Duke that are kind of spread out in there, where you're just like, okay, Notre Dame needs to play their game. But I think the best case is 11-1, 12-0, and see what happens in the playoffs. Like I think Notre Dame just get in the playoffs, win a game, and then hopefully be in a position. Like that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you see improvement, but it's still not enough. And you kind of waste the 1 year you have with Sam Hartman, and maybe you go, I don't know, 9-3, 10-2. Because honestly, 9-3 would be a massive disappointment for me, because I look at Notre Dame's team, I say, one of the things that Notre Dame has been missing over the last few years is a really good, proven quarterback. Well, you have one now. I mean, you have a quarterback that's thrown 110 touchdown passes in his career, the ACC all-time leader in touchdown passes. So if you can't make a playoff run with Sam Hartman, then you're kind of back to square one. Now you have to go, is CJ Carr ready to start as a true freshman? Is Kenny Minchey going to be ready to start as a redshirt freshman? Then you got to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit, which is not the best thing in the world, right? So I think that going 9-3, even 10-2 for me, and not making the playoffs would be a little bit of a disappointment. I really do think it is, because I think that they'll grow from last year, but it's just a question of how quickly that growth will happen with some of their younger players.
Absolutely. So there, let's switch gears. Obviously, I'm a fan of a Big Ten team. There's been talk for as long as I can remember, right, as a human, of Notre Dame joining the Big Ten some way, somehow. Obviously, it doesn't look like that's ever going to happen, and Notre Dame doesn't have any incentive to do so, especially right now. Anyway, but it just came out recently that the Big Ten may not have all of the money that they thought they were going to have with this recent TV deal, and that the last commissioner may have screwed the pooch just a little bit and left the mess for the new guy. What did you gather from that?
I mean, you said it perfectly. Like, he created a mess and he just left it where it was, right? I mean, it was so typical with that guy, though, man. It really was. Like, was anybody surprised that he did something like that? I mean, like, honestly,
at all. In fact, it would have been more surprising if that was just the end and he left the conference in a good standing that way. But
exactly,
not so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a tough situation to be in, obviously, with, because the way it looks and things can change. And I always tell people, like, the conference realignment stuff, like, let's let stuff happen for a couple of years here, because things could change very quickly. But the trend is Big Ten, SEC. Those are the two giants, right? And then we'll figure it out from there. I just think that maybe backlogs it a little bit, maybe it slows the progress a little bit as far as that super conference stuff. But ultimately, I mean, as it pertains to Notre Dame, you hit on it already, but like, Notre Dame, if they are ever forced to joining a conference at some point, I think that it's the smartest thing for them to do is to remain independent as long as possible, because the longer you remain independent, the more valuable you become, right? Like, Absolutely. If it's the SEC, the Big Ten, they're both going to want Notre Dame to be in there, because Notre Dame will make them money at the end of the day. They will make them money, so they'll want them. So stay there, because then it could be a little bit of a bargaining chip eventually. Excuse me.
And I was telling people, even as big as what you think like a USC joining the Big Ten is, or along with UCLA, because I don't want to act like they're not there. But that's nothing compared to what Notre Dame joining, the Big Ten would be, especially if, you have USC there to go along with it. And I think that's part of the reason that the Big Ten, made the move to get UCLA and USC, is to kind of force something with Notre Dame. Unfortunately, they aren't very good at forcing things, except for bad words down your throat. That being said, there is now, it looks like NBC has some sort of rights to night games in November, which is a huge, no in Big Ten land, but apparently it's going to happen, and it's going to start this season by all accounts, with Ohio State and Michigan State, it looks like. Do you see a problem with night games in November? Look who decides to join the party.
What's up, man?
Not much.
I mean, I'm kind of indifferent to it, to be honest. Like, I don't really have like a big opinion on it, to be honest, Phil. Like, it's just one of those situations where it's like, I understand why someone wouldn't want it. I understand why someone would want it. For me, I'm just watching football at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So, like, I honestly don't have like too much of a massive opinion on it at the moment. It's like, I understand again what both sides are against or for, but it just it's. Well, I just kind of want to see how it plays out, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. Ryan, I'll let you ask a question since you haven't.
So I am sorry, Ryan. We had a scheduling conflict because he is on Eastern time and I am on Central time. So
I got you, man. I totally.
He told me 8, and so I'm thinking, it's 8 Central time. So, okay. Anyway, how have you been, man?
I like the Sam Hartman jersey in the back, by the way, man.
I literally, no joke, I got it the day he transferred.
Nice.
The day he transferred. So, but anyway, I wanted to ask you, man. So, obviously, going into this year, there's a lot of hype around Sam Hartman.
Yep.
As there should be, who I personally think is a top 5 quarterback in college football this year. Phil and some Michigan fans like to doo-doo on our party and say that, we'll go 8-4. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this season? Do you think – because I personally think this is the best Notre Dame team that Notre Dame's had since maybe 2012.
It's possible.
I mean, best title chances since 2012. I mean, what do you personally think?
I think it's the most talented roster Notre Dame's had in several years, probably at least 2015, maybe. I mean, 2015 was a stupidly loaded team, right? Like they just had really bad defensive coordinator and there were some injuries and all that conversation, right? But I really think that this team, because the spots for me, Ryan, that like have been bleak at Notre Dame in the past, at least growing up and more recently, is quarterback. Wide receiver's been a little bit up and down, and cornerback was another spot that I was just like, it's not consistently good enough, right? But this year you say Sam Hartman, 110 career touchdown passes, the all-time leading passer in ACC history, combined with wide receivers that I think are going to take a massive jump with Jaden Thomas and Tobias Merriweather and Deion Colsey and Chris Tyree moving to the slot, and Jaden Greathouse is a true freshman. I think wide receiver is going to be a ton better. And then honestly, if Cam Hart can stay healthy for a full season, could be arguably the best cornerback duo in college football with Benjamin Morrison coming back. So I think that's what has me pumped, man, is that like you always know what you can depend on with Notre Dame, right? They're going to mostly be technically sound. Their offensive line's going to be really good. They're going to get tight end production. But I think that this year's team could be different because they have some areas that historically, at least recently, I shouldn't say historically because historically they've been a power, but recently there's been some inconsistencies or some underwhelming play. And I feel like they've kind of erased some of that going into this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And one of my things as being a Notre Dame fan that I've always wished we could have, like when you watch the Oklahomas of the world or the Clemsons of the world when they had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence or the Bryce Youngs, is that explosive offense that's led by a quarterback that is a difference maker. Notre Dame's had a lot of guys that are good quarterbacks. Ian Book, Jimmy Clausen was a good one. That could have been great had he had more stuff around him. But, I mean, I don't know that Notre Dame has had a quarterback the caliber of Sam Hartman that goes with that, also having a team the caliber that they do now, right, where it all fits together.
I think that makes sense because I would say I would say Brady Quinn in 2005 and 2006, right? Like he was very good, obviously, his last 2 years. But the defense wasn't great. It wasn't. Offensive line was okay. It wasn't amazing though. And then Jimmy Clausen played on one of the worst Notre Dame rosters they've had in years. I mean, it was a really bad team the last couple of years. But Sam Hartman, I think, if the defense gets a little bit better than last year, I'm just asking for a little bit better. I'm not asking for a ton. They're going to be a plus defense in college football. Their offensive line has the best left tackle, in my opinion, coming back in college football. You have a starting right tackle. You have a starting center. I think the skill positions are going to be very improved from what they were in the past. So I think that you are correct. I think that it is the best combination of proven commodity quarterback and talented team. I think that when you mesh those things together, I agree 100%. Like, I think that you are looking at a team that it seems ready to make that jump. I think it's really going to come down to the coaching and just how good it is in certain situations. Because I was talking to Phil before you hopped on, but like the pillar games is what I call them, the three big ones, the Clemson, Ohio State, and USC. Those are going to be really telling. You have to go 2-1 at least in those games in order to make the playoff. I think Notre Dame can, but you went through the Brian Kelly era, right? So it's like they would beat all the average teams, and they should be. But then it's like the 2020 Alabama, the 2018 Clemson, the 2015 Clemson. It's just like you just can't beat the great teams, right? You can't beat those elite teams. So being able to do that is going to be instrumental because, I mean, I flash back to 2020. It's like the four quarterbacks that were in the playoffs that year: Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, you had Justin Fields, and Ian Book. One of those does not belong in that category, and we all know who it is.
So there are some questions in the comment section. I want to make sure everyone or try to, as much as possible, gets the questions asked. G Money asks, Ryan, do you believe Notre Dame has a top 5 roster in the country?
Of pure talent, yes, I do. It's not all proven production. I mean, Georgia, for instance, is the number 1 roster in college football, in my opinion. And more importantly, they have a lot of proven production on that roster. There's potential, and then there's production. Someday those things have to meet in order for you to win football games, obviously, right? But I think that Notre Dame, yes, from a top to bottom, I do believe that they have a top 5 roster in college football. Does that mean that they'll be a top 5 team in college football this year? Not necessarily. It's about how things mesh together. But I do think they have a lot of talent, without a question.
And I definitely agree, too. I think of it, though, this way, kind of like what you said, Ryan, is you could have the most talented roster, but that doesn't always guarantee that you're going to be a top 4 team by the end of the year. Texas, on a year-to-year basis, has probably a top 5 roster in college football every year because of the state of recruiting in Texas. 8-4, 9-3, 7-5. So just because you guys have had the most talented roster doesn't mean anything if you guys don't have the coaching to back it up and these guys don't develop as they should.
Well, I mean, just look at the playoffs last year, Michigan and TCU. Like, who had the more talented roster there? We know the answer to that. We know the answer to that. It's not even really that close. It's just one team was ready to play that day, and that's how it went.
Up, huh? Right?
Max
no,
Duggan was
I'm sorry.
No, they were definitely ready to play. Those bums. So Dallas fan thinks the best quarterback since Jimmy Clausen is Sam Hartman, and can't remember a wide receiver room like this ever since the 90s. What do you say to that?
I say that quarterback since Jimmy Clausen is very fair. I mean, the best quarterback since Jimmy Clausen right now is Ian Book, right? So, like, yes, I think he could be better than Ian Book. I do.
You don't think Deshaun Kaiser? You don't think Deshaun?
I think Deshaun was a good. I think he was very good as a redshirt freshman. Yeah, but I mean, I still think that when you're talking about just comparing the two, like him as a redshirt freshman compared to a 6-year senior Sam Hartman, I'd still say take 6-year senior Sam Hartman. I think I would. Wide receiver room. I know Michael's super excited about the wide receiver room. I am as well. Like, there's no doubt that's a deep room. But again, it's not a proven productive room right now. Your leading receiver coming back is like 300 something yards last year in Jaden Thomas, I like him. He's a really good player. I think they're going to be a good unit, but production needs to follow. But there is more talent in that wide receiver than they have in a long time. There's no doubt about that.
Let me ask you this, Ryan, because obviously we talked about Notre Dame's capabilities with Sam Hartman now on the roster. With this roster, obviously we saw the ESPN poll that came out a couple weeks ago that a lot of people weren't too happy about with the top 15.
Yeah.
So what do you think gives the national media pause in terms of making Notre Dame with Sam Hartman a legitimate national title threat? And why do you think the national media is still sleeping on Notre Dame going into this season?
I think it's a combination of some stuff. I mean, one, the only data you have on a Marcus Freeman coach team is that they went 9-4 and lost to Stanford and Marshall, right? Like, that's part of it. I also think that I believe that Notre Dame would be at least a couple spots higher in most polls, if not for the Andy Ludwig offensive coordinator situation that happens. And then because I really think that when you look at how everything went down, you have an inexperienced offensive coordinator that you just don't know enough about at the moment. I think he'll do a fine job, but it's a question right now. It's a super question. So I think there's some coaching question marks right now. Will Al Golden, will he take the step forward as a defense coordinator after not being one since like 2004 or something like that was the last time he was a defensive coordinator? So I think it's just coaching question marks more than anything right now, and something that Notre Dame needs to answer for sure.
I guess my question was more of like, because like you see the teams that are ranked ahead of Notre Dame in that poll, one of whom is LSU. And I know a lot of people are very high on LSU.
Here you go with LSU.
No, this is just, you can say as Notre Dame biased or whatever, but I watch every single college football game. I'm a college football buff. I watch every minute of college football that's on during the season. Me watching LSU throughout the season, I don't get the same sense that a lot of people get going into this year that, they're really good. I think they're a good team. Obviously, you have to be a good team to beat Alabama, but to me, they're a little bit overhyped because I watched them play games against an Arkansas team last year that didn't have KJ Jefferson.
And still played them. Still played
and
hard.
Squeak by. I mean, they probably should have lost to Auburn if Auburn wasn't one of the worst teams to watch in college football last year. I mean, I guess I don't get why LSU gets, they're a top 4 team going into next year. When to me, they're kind of in the same boat as Notre Dame. They have a lot of question marks. They both have really good quarterbacks, a lot of talent on the roster. I guess I don't see it. I don't see it. Me personally, just as an eye test, I don't see LSU being.
And as a, I guess, second question to this question, who has the better coach?
I mean, the more proven coach is Brian Kelly. I mean, you just don't have any data points on Marcus Freeman right now. His career record's 9-4. I mean, that's what he is.
It's not a fair question to ask right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about a coach that's been coaching like 20 plus years versus a guy that's going into his second year. So it's not apples to apples for sure.
Right. The Otis brings up a point here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Midwest teams, even Notre Dame, the other state, Michigan, Penn State, they play outdoors in the winter time, right? Or late fall, winter. And that is obviously if you are from Florida, California, Georgia, these places, right? You're not used to playing in the snow or inclement weather or cold even. Is that a deterrent for, well, I'm sure it's a deterrent for some players. How much of a deterrent do you think it is for, the majority of the recruits in the South?
I mean, I think there's some validity to it. Like, there's some kids that just don't want to go up north to deal with all that, the weather and all that type of stuff. So I think it's slightly overblown, though. Like, I've talked to a lot of kids from Texas and Florida and Georgia and Alabama and stuff that, like, they don't care that much about the cold because it's something where, I mean, no one really likes the cold. I'm from New Jersey and I don't like the cold. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter that much. But I think for some, I think more than anything, in my opinion, it's just, covering recruiting side of things. I think that recruits use the weather thing more as an excuse not to go play at Notre Dame than it is actuality a thing, right? Like, it's too cold up there. It's like, that's just a scapegoat. Like, that's not true. Like, I don't really think that they deeply believe that, but I do think that there's some kids that just don't want to have anything to do with the North because all they know is the South. And I think it's vice versa, though. It's like some North kids are just like, I'm going to play at Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame or wherever. I'm not going to go down to Florida State or something like that. So I think there's some validity to it, but I think it is a little overblown.
And a lot of kids from the southern states, especially, like we've seen it with kids like Drac Bowen was one of those kids at one point where he was all SEC or bust. Jaden Rydell seems like one of those kids now that Notre Dame seems like they're kind of back in the picture with him. Is one of the kids at SEC or bust. I think it's just like depends on where you play. If you're playing from the South, I have a lot of family from Florida and a lot of kids that play down there. If they don't make it to the SEC, they think they're a bust. So that's just how it is down there. I don't think really weather has anything because how I look at it is if I'm a 5-star kid, I don't care if I got to play in the cold because I'm going to have to play in the cold if I get to the NFL anyway. That's how I look at it. It's like, I can't pick and choose. If I go play for the Chicago Bears, I can't pick and choose whether or not I'm going to play in a game in the snow. You get out there and play. So, yeah, I don't take too much input into when it comes to weather when it comes to recruits.
Absolutely. Let's stick on recruiting for a second. Last year, obviously Notre Dame did a great job recruiting. You lost a couple. You had a 5-star decommit and then another, choose
5-star
Oklahoma.
decommits.
Right, 2 5-star decommits. I'm sorry, Oklahoma got one, and then what's the defensive lineman?
Alabama got Keon Keeley.
Right.
Yeah,
there we go. So this year, not as fast of a start in terms of the recruiting trail, but you're still a top 5, I believe, team in terms of recruiting. What do you obviously other than academics, because we know that's an issue for some of the kids that want to go to Notre Dame or other schools, right? What is the issue that's keeping like a school like Notre Dame from having the number 1 class to end 2024? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a couple things that are going against Notre Dame, and I'm not going to dwell on the NIL landscape that much in this podcast.
Right.
I'm not going to do it, but that is something that Notre Dame has to navigate. There's just Notre Dame's never going to be a team that just gives handouts out, and there's going to be some schools, and it's what they're going to do. So I don't have any pause. And if I was a kid, I would have my hand out too, to be very honest. It's just my perspective. But they're fighting the NIL landscape, and they're fighting the fact that Notre Dame hasn't won a national championship since 1988. That's what they're fighting, right? So I mean, Alabama can go right in front of Notre Dame for a recruit, and they could say to Keon Keeley, let's use Keon Keeley. Keon, you'd stay down here. We'll help you with the NIL stuff as well. And also, we've won 6 national championships since you've been alive, right? Like we've won 6. How many has Notre Dame won? Like that's the big bullets to Notre Dame right now is the national championship opportunities and the NIL landscape. Other than that, I mean, Notre Dame's a beautiful place. Notre Dame plays high-level football. They have great academics. 4 for 40 with the Notre Dame degree. There's a lot of selling points, but the biggest stickler is national championships, developing NFL talents, and the ability to compete at the highest level. That's what you can hold against Notre Dame right now.
Let me ask you. Oh, go ahead, Matthew.
Michael Campbell adds a super chat question. It's not really a question; it's a statement. Defensive end Logan Thomas commitment tomorrow, moving up again at Notre Dame. Is that the thinking that he's committing to Notre Dame?
Yeah, I mean, so Logan Thomas is choosing a school tomorrow at 5:45 Eastern time. He is
Eastern, Ryan.
What did I say? Did I say Eastern?
No.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're talking to me.
I thought I said Eastern, didn't I? Or 4:45 Central time for some of us, right? Like he's going to be committing choosing between Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas Tech. There's a couple other schools. Notre Dame's in a really good spot though with that one. Yeah. So I'm not going to say
top get.
Yeah. He's considered a consensus top 150 type of kid. He's very talented.
I have a question regarding recruiting, really quick, yes. Ryan, and then I'm sorry, Fervel, I'll let you get in. Especially during like what they call dead periods, right? Like let's say after the college football playoff, you see movement up and down the rating system for 24/7 or On3, whoever that is, right? Whatever the institution is that is doing the ratings, right? ESPN, Rivals. How is football just year round now, right? With camps and things like that, or what's going on in those times where you think it's a down period for football?
I mean, something's always happening. I mean, right now we just got finished up with the last couple of weeks. Coaches have been allowed to be on the road, obviously, and be, they're not allowed to talk to the kids one-on-one in the, when they visit the schools. They're allowed to talk to coaches. They're allowed to watch them work out, all that good stuff. I mean, it's constantly moving, man. It really is. I mean, you talk about the camp circuits and the combine circuits and, all those types of things and school, the school testing stuff is going to be ramping up obviously in the summer. So kids will be just all over the place. June is going to be a big month for official visits. I mean, there are several official visitors Notre Dame is expecting each and every weekend. I mean, there's one where I think there's probably like 11 official visitors in one weekend right now. So schools will be taking in all those kids in June, and then official visits will pop back up during the season and whatnot. So, I mean, you're talking about official visits now leading up to the summer, the official start of summer. And you're talking about the summer being run with camps and all that great stuff. And then we get into the fall, and they're obviously playing a high school season, but also on the weekends, they're going to be visiting schools for official visits and unofficial visits throughout. And that's, I mean, dude, it's not even just 2024 kids. It's 2024, 2025, 2026. Like, they're all ramping up. And I mean, Notre Dame's offering literally 2026 kids right now, which is just absolutely gross. And then after the season, then you're talking about going into the end of December into January. Then we're talking about National Signing Day. Then you're talking about a couple more 6 weeks and the second National Signing Day. They literally made 2 National Signing Days now, man. So, I mean, recruiting never stops. It's wild. Absolutely wild.
Absolutely. Ryan?
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask because, obviously you follow Notre Dame recruiting. You're pretty involved in that world. Yep. I was going to ask you because I've seen a lot of stuff come out about Elijah Rushing, Justin Scott within this past week. How do you feel? I mean, because me personally, with at least the Miami prediction for Justin Scott that came out this week, I'd rather that be now than closer to December.
Yeah.
I think there really has been 2 predictions, both from one from 24/7 and one from On3 at this point now for him to land at Miami. Elijah Rushing just got predicted from On3 to Oregon. What are your senses on those recruitments? And I mean, do you think Notre Dame, I guess if you had to give it a 10 to 100, what are your chances? Like, how do you like Notre Dame in their recruitments?
Yeah, I mean, so for Elijah Rushing, it's been low. I mean, someone asked me to do a prediction from like 1 to 10 the other day, and I gave it like a 3. I mean, Elijah Rushing, I don't think is ever. I don't think he's going to go to Notre Dame, and I don't think he ever was going to go to Notre Dame. I think he likes Notre Dame, but I think that there's pulls from all over the place, man. Like you mentioned, Oregon. I mean, Florida was a team that he liked for a long time as well. I don't think that he was ever going to come to Notre Dame, to be honest. So he still has the official visit in June, which. Could that change something? Hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully it can, but I wouldn't bet on it is kind of where I'm going with that one. The Justin Scott thing is just a headache. It really is. So for people that don't know who Justin Scott, he's from St. Ignatius in the city of Chicago, hour and a half from Notre Dame. He goes to a prestigious Catholic school, an hour and a half away, right in your backyard. And he wanted to go to Notre Dame very badly. He wanted an offer from Notre Dame very, very early in this process. They got him to offer a little bit late, but he was still trending. I mean, there was a couple months ago that he was going to commit to Notre Dame. I mean, he's been outright and said it, like, I was going to commit to Notre Dame. Decided to take a step back a little bit. So now he's making his visits, obviously. He's been to Georgia. He's been to Miami. He's going to have the official visits going into June. And, I mean, basically the crux of it is he doesn't have a visit scheduled to Notre Dame next month. And they're talking about like he might take it into the season for an official visit with Notre Dame. And the issue with that is not that he's taking other visits, because the recruiting process. So do your recruiting process. The issue I have is that when June finishes up, that means that he will have been to Miami and Georgia more times than he's been to Notre Dame in the last year. And Notre Dame's an hour and a half away. It's a tank of gas away to go into Notre Dame, right? You take a day trip to Notre Dame. So that's just really troubling to me. The longer that this plays out where they can't get him back on campus, the worse I feel about it. I still would say that Notre Dame is the leader in my opinion. But if they don't get him back on campus anytime soon, I just think that gets bleaker and bleaker, and then eventually it flips the script in that situation. So it's unsettling, I guess, is the word I would use for the Justin Scott recruitment right now. And it's very unfortunate because he is a slam dunk Notre Dame kid. He has a position that they need, a 6'4" plus 310-pound defensive tackle. That's what Notre Dame needs more of. They need that type of guy. And unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of stagnation in that recruitment right now, unfortunately.
So that's where it kind of goes into my second question is, the guys like Elijah Rushing, like Justin Scott, like Keon Keeley, who for majority of, if not their entirety of their recruitment process, screams Notre Dame fit. Catholic school, great academics, Notre Dame kid, through and through. It's just a matter of time before he ends up blue and gold. Why? And they have the reason that seems like the reason they don't end up at Notre Dame is because of the 5-star next to their name. Why do you think Notre Dame is missing on so many of these kids that are Notre Dame fits when Notre Dame's making it a priority to hit on kids that are Notre Dame specific? It's like that's their whole focus of recruiting.
Yeah.
And they're still losing out on these kids.
Well, I think it's individualistic for some. I mean, like Dante Moore's one, for instance, that Phil mentioned earlier in the podcast. That wasn't a Dante Moore decision. That was a support system around him decision that he didn't end up in Notre Dame. That was all it was. Keon Keeley, I think Keon Keeley would still love to be at Notre Dame. The problem is that Keon Keeley also wants to play NFL football. And when you talk about the track record stuff, we just had a kid that went 3rd overall in this year's draft, and a team mortgaged multiple first-round picks to go get him. And you know what position he plays? The same exact one you do, brother. Like, you only need to play 3 years here, dominate, and then you're going to be a first-round pick. Alabama can pitch that to Notre Dame. Can pitch that to Keon Keeley. You know who can't pitch that? Notre Dame, because Notre Dame hasn't had a first-round defensive end since 1997. That's a fact that you're dealing with right now. So that track record does not help at all. And then also, Keon Keeley is a Florida kid, and for whatever reason, Notre Dame has had a very tough time consistently getting into Florida. Like, that's just the situation, and there's some validity. But to your point, Keon Keeley is an absolute Notre Dame fit. He's a position they need. He's a player they need. I thought he was the best player in last year's class, in my opinion, overall. I thought he was incredible. Unfortunately, the things that Alabama can recruit negatively against Notre Dame is we developed this position a lot better than Notre Dame. True. We can get you to the NFL at this position. True. And we can contend for national championships. Also true. Notre Dame can't check all those boxes right now for some guys. So
the only thing that I questioned about that was just back then, I remember during his process, he had said one of the key things he was looking for was he didn't want to go somewhere and not be the guy. He wanted to be someone. And I always thought, like, hey, if Keon comes to Notre Dame, he's the guy. If you go to Alabama, they have 5 stars all on that defensive line. You may not start for 2 years, but that's why, man, I tell you what, it is so frustrating being a Notre Dame fan at these times, because it's like people will say, I'm sure you see it on Twitter, Ryan, it's Notre Dame can't recruit. You guys can't get 5 stars. And it's so frustrating because I feel like we can. I feel like Marcus Freeman's the one coach that can do it.
Yes.
And it's just like, you ever see that commercial where the guy's got the fishing pole and he's got the dollar bill on it? And it's literally, oh, you got to be quicker than, like, that's literally Notre Dame with 5-star recruits right now. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. You've got 2 right now, right?
We got 2 borderline, TJ Carr and Cam Williams.
CJ's a 5-star. They've been docking him a few points because he's Notre Dame for a little
Everybody
bit.
hates CJ Carr for some reason.
It's so funny.
CJ Carr is a 4-star for going to Notre Dame. Putting his grandfather in that position to wear that hat.
So you think he'd be a 5-star if he was committed to Michigan?
Absolutely.
Yes, I do. I think he would be a 5-star on every recruiting ranking if he was committed to Michigan. I think
didn't Cam Williams get a?
Yeah, he got his 5th star or 7.
Yeah,
that's 5th star. He's dynamic, man. He's fantastic.
Oh, I love him. I actually think he's going to be the best receiver Notre Dame's had since maybe Golden Tate. That's how high I am on that kid. I watched his highlights. I'm from Illinois, and I played against his high school in high school football. Man, he is just insane to watch.
Yeah, he's a great kid too, man. He's a great recruiter for Notre Dame as well. He's one of the best recruiters of the recruits right now, so it's been good.
Yeah, he messed up.
What's funny is Antoine's a Michigan fan, and I don't think he likes Jaden Davis much. He's a CJ Carr guy. So
wait,
what? Antoine, man.
Yeah, Antoine doesn't like Jaden Davis.
Jaden Davis here. No, it's I get it.
Really quick, Ryan, I wanted to ask you, because me and Phil have been talking about this last month or so. So obviously, me personally, I have Notre Dame, Michigan making the playoff this year. What do you think it would do for the college football landscape if Notre Dame and Michigan were to play for a national championship?
Oh man, I mean, it'd be wonderful. It would be wonderful because I mean, it'd only be wonderful though if they beat Michigan. Like, I mean, I can't stomach Michigan potentially winning a national championship. To be honest, I would rather Notre Dame beats Michigan in the first round of the playoffs, and then they play an SEC team in maybe LSU. I don't know.
We'll do you think that would be the most watched semifinal or playoff ever, Notre Dame Michigan, or do you think anything could beat that?
It'd be massive. It would definitely be massive. I mean, because those are two. Like I know you guys hate Ohio State. You know, talking about
we
fans.
both hate them.
I get that. But Notre Dame and Michigan's also one of those rivalries where, like, I hate those guys, man. And I feel like there's a little bit more respect in that rivalry than there is the Michigan-Ohio State one for the most part. But, yeah, I mean, yes, it would be.
In terms of, like, if you're talking about respect where I'm spitting on my hand and shaking your hand, yeah, that's the amount of respect we have for Michigan, right?
Exactly.
Right. No, absolutely. I hate you guys just a little less than I hate the other state. But it's strong for the other state. Look, we've had you here for almost an hour now, right? We're gonna wind it down for you. I know you've got things to get to, including Daddy Duty Ryan. He's going to be a father 2 times over here any day now.
Congrats, man.
So
I got a 4-year-old, so I know how tough the parenting gig is.
Nice, man. Yeah, my daughter's going through the terrible 2s right now. So
just wait till she's 4 and she can tell you, I'm not cleaning my room, Daddy. You're cleaning it. That's what I got to deal with every day. So
man.
That's hilarious.
I'm gonna be super outnumbered, man. I'm gonna have my wife and I have 2 daughters and we have a girl dog too. I'm just like, man, I need
girl dog.
I need some men in here.
For sure. So Ryan, anything you got for Ryan before we let him go?
Great name, by the way. Great name.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan to Ryan. That's the best name in the world, man. I guess the one thing I'll leave you with, Ryan, is, where do you think Notre Dame's recruiting class ends up? Do you think they have a legit shot if they could get guys like the Gerby Lambert, get Justin Scott in the class, maybe upset, get Elijah Rushing, which I know that's a long shot, but how confident are you, or I guess, do you think Notre Dame can finish with a top 5 class?
It's possible, but Notre Dame's margin for error is just getting a little bit smaller as we wind down here. I mean, because it's like there's a few elite level players on the board. I say that to say, top 50 to top 100 type of players, right? Mm-hmm. So Justin Scott, you mentioned Gerby Lambert. I would mention Kingston Villiamoasa, obviously the linebacker out of St. John Bosco in that conversation as well. Those are really like the big recruits that Notre Dame needs to find. Because right now, I mean, Notre Dame's pretty much done at wide receiver. They could go 4 if they wanted to, but like they're good with where they are. They're not really pushing it. They want a second running back, but I mean, Keidron Young is a really great running back, but is he going to move the needle as far as, getting a top 5 class? Potentially. Like, we'll see what happens. Tight end's an interesting one because you still have Jaden Riddell and Carter Nelson on the board. So if you get one of those guys, Carter Nelson's now ranked as like the number 40 player nationally by at least one recruiting service. So that one moves the needle a little bit. Offensive line recruiting has me worried right now, though, man, to be honest. Like, I thought Gerby was a shoe-in when Coach Heastan was still here, but I'm just not nearly as confident as I once was.
He's just so quiet. He's so quiet about his recruitment. You don't ever know what's going on in that kid's head.
Yeah, you really don't, man. So if you get Gerby, though, you get Kingston, and you somehow salvage everything, and you get Justin Scott, I think you potentially have a top 5 class. I think it's possible. I do. I think more realistically, you probably finish somewhere 6 to 10 because I just don't know if you hit the inside straight with all those guys. Like, you probably get maybe 2 out of 3, and then you fill up the rest of the class. Maybe you flip a Caleb Beasley from Tennessee at some point during the season. Like, that would be fantastic if you're able to do that. Maybe you get a DeJuan Lane at safety, which is a guy that they love a lot. But I think right now, more realistically, it's probably a 6 to 10 class because I think that there's going to be at least one miss in that group. And I just think that Notre Dame has put themselves in a position where it's like there's boards that have been built, but there's no question that Kingston Villiamoasa is the guy on the linebacker board, right? Yeah. And then there's just a couple of guys a little bit of a tier below, in my opinion. So you really have to hit the inside straight if you have a shot at top 5.
Yeah, man. And hey, once we win that national championship this year, maybe we'll start getting all those 5 stars.
Oh
right,
man, every single year, man, every single year. I was telling Phil, man, but I really think that if Notre Dame's able to win something significant with Marcus Freeman over the next couple of years, even in just make a playoffs and maybe win a first round game, I really think recruiting is going to blow up even more.
Well, you know
They're
what?
just going to be like, yeah.
I think we're seeing some of the effects of that, right? With our back-to-back trips to the college football playoff.
Well, Jim Harbaugh messed himself up last thing, man. If all that stuff about the NFL didn't get out so much, they would have capitalized last year a lot more.
Yeah.
Like this year.
Well, you know what? Like I've been telling Phil and a lot of Notre Dame fans this. It's like with Georgia, at least, people forget Georgia wasn't a top 5 recruiting class every single year type of team until Kirby Smart got there. Won them that national championship. They could recruit classes before. They could recruit, but they weren't on the level anywhere near the level they are now.
That's fair.
And so I think that I make this comparison, and I'm not saying Marcus Freeman's better than or could be better than Kirby Smart, but in terms of their statures and where they started their career, people forget Kirby Smart's first year at Georgia. He went 8-4.
It's true.
People forget that, and did not have a top 10 recruiting class.
I mean, it's pretty rare for a guy. It's pretty rare for a guy just have a seamless transition. I mean, Nick Saban was 6-6 in his first year at Alabama. I mean, that stuff always happens. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I'm hopeful, very hopeful. I am too. We shall see.
Absolutely. I'll get you out of here on this. Benny Woods had the question. Somebody has to dethrone Georgia, right? Who is the best candidate to do so?
Man, I think this is going to be a really entertaining season because I think it's pretty wide open. I mean, when's the last time you had Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State all with new starting quarterbacks? I mean, when's the last time that happened? It's pretty insane. I mean, you guys are going to hate this, but I think Ohio State has a chance to be pretty good this year. I think Alabama has a chance to have a kind of a comeback season a little bit. I think there's a few different teams. Like, I really can't give you one because I really do think that this is kind of a wide open year in college football potentially.
It's a collective. We're gonna have to jump Georgia to get them out of there. Ryan, thank you for joining the show tonight. It's been a pleasure. We look forward to having you on future shows, and much success to you, and congratulations on the new baby.
I appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Yeah, go Irish.
Go Absolutely.
Irish. Go blue. Ryan, you decided to join us.
Hey, man, you always gotta put that CST next to it.
Put the
I told you, man, I got my wisdom teeth pulled out, so I'm pain, man.
Did they give you? Were you on the drugs? Where you were saying things that you didn't mean?
Made me. No, they didn't. They don't do the laughing gas in Illinois anymore, so it's actually illegal. So they did like a sedation.
Oh, okay.
And it's weird. I was awake, but I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
Like I know that for a fact that I was awake, but I don't remember anything that happened.
Wow.
I just know that I was so frustrated, and I literally cried myself to sleep the other night because I could not eat. My mouth was so numb. I hadn't ate all day. I'm sitting there trying to drink a water, and the water is just spilling out. I'm like, dude, this is so miserable.
Sounds like they gave you the stuff Bill Cosby was giving his female friends.
Yeah, man. Exactly.
I was awake, but I don't remember anything.
Yeah, I was awake. I know I was awake. But if you asked me what happened, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. But that was good, man. Ryan was a great guest. Tomorrow, you want to do this tomorrow, or is this good for the week?
We could do one tomorrow if you want.
We can do this tomorrow. We're back live tomorrow. You heard it right here from Ryan.
When Logan Thomas commits.
If Logan Thomas commits to Notre Dame, we're not doing it.
He's going to, man. Hey, you know what? Because that actually might be around the same time we start. What is this commitment? 4:30?
5:45, right?
Is it 5:45 Eastern?
Oh, but it's like 4. You're right. 4.
So before 45 my time. So that'd be around when we'd start. We could talk about that. Hey, Logan Thomas is better than the Smith twins. You heard it here first. He's ranked higher than both of them. So I don't want to hear.
Yeah, but the both of them together are better than him, and he's ranked higher than them in one service.
On 3 is the only service that matters.
No, it's not. On 3 is trash, man.
No, it's
anyway. Thank everyone in the comment section. I'm sorry I didn't get to everyone's comments. I will try to get better at that. Until next time, be sure to follow us. You see the Twitters here. They're going across the bottom. That's me. That's Ryan. Ryan, what do you have going on with week 0 this week?
So I hired a new editor. I'm getting Phil his audio this week when I'm off the Oxy.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Whenever I'm not, I'm kind of high a little bit because of the Oxy, but I'll get that to you this week. But we have an Audric Estimate video coming out next week. And then the week after, we got a JJ McCarthy video coming out. So be on the lookout for that, all you Michigan fans. I'm going to make sure I put JJ McCarthy for Heisman in the title so you guys can because he should. Only for my boy Phil, only because he's my boy. If he wasn't my boy, I'd be like, JJ is garbage. But no, that's going to be coming out. And then we'll be doing our Pac-12? Pac-12 conference predictions this weekend or Friday.
Tune into that. This past Friday, they did the Big Ten. I was a guest on that show. It was excellent. Make sure you tune into that. Go check that out if you missed it.
Hey, we had Michigan going 14-0 and winning the Natty, didn't we, Phil?
15.
But yeah, man.
It's gonna be
if
great.
you guys could, like I said, if you guys could, that'd be great. Go over to Week 0 Productions, give us a follow, subscribe. Got a lot of stuff going on. So,
yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right. Till next time, stay angry, my friends. I'm
upset.